Major corporate shakeups and hefty tariffs are rattling U.S. industrial heartlands and consumer prices alike. Will thousands of job cuts and soaring steel prices push American families to the edge of a new economic crisis? General Electric will slash 12,000 jobs in its energy division worldwide. Workers, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast, face sudden layoffs, affecting families and local businesses. Tax revenues shrink, while social support costs rise, straining community services. These cuts hit regions already coping with industrial decline. Families lose income. Fewer local taxes lead to underfunded schools and public services. Communities must rely on unemployment and aid programs, stretching already limited resources. In towns where GE was a cornerstone employer, real estate values are dropping, and small businesses are closing due to reduced foot traffic and consumer spending. Entire local economies face cascading effects from this workforce reduction, with no quick path to recovery. The U.S. doubled steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, effective June 4th. Domestic aluminum prices jumped by 54% Midwest premium, and hot-rolled coil steel climbed 7.4%. Canned food prices may rise 9 to 15%, or by 30 cents per can. Consumers face higher prices for cars, appliances, canned goods, and construction materials. Low and middle-income families will feel the pinch most during grocery shopping and household spending. Communities relying on manufacturing may bar business expansion or relocation due to cost uncertainty. Families planning home repairs or vehicle purchases are now postponing them. Construction jobs are being reevaluated or cut. Small manufacturers warn that profit margins are evaporating, forcing potential layoffs or even closures in already vulnerable rural regions. Tariffs will cost the typical household $3,800 a year. Car prices could increase by $2,000 to $4,000 per vehicle, squeezing middle-class budgets and diverting spending from other essentials. The US ISM manufacturing PMI fell to 48.5 in May, marking a third consecutive month of contraction. Companies like GM delayed investor briefings, and UPS plans to cut 20,000 jobs, citing tariff-driven cost pressures. Hiring freezes and layoffs make job markets unpredictable. Families delaying purchases weaken local economies. Consumer confidence drops, harming small businesses and eroding the social fabric of manufacturing towns. Experts caution that tariffs alone cannot revive U.S. industry. They urge long-term strategies, retraining workers, supporting innovation, and sustainable investment. GE and others are shifting production abroad, seeking stable costs and business climates. When companies leave, towns lose jobs, tax dollars, and identity. Workers without new skills face unemployment. Without a clear industrial roadmap, communities struggle to attract new firms or retrain displaced employees. Recent U.S. tariffs on aluminum and steel imports are prompting major companies to reconsider their manufacturing strategies. How will these shifts impact American consumers and workers? Coca-Cola is grappling with increased aluminum prices due to the U.S. doubling tariffs on imported aluminum to 50%, effective June 4, 2025. The beverage giant, which sources aluminum for its cans from Canada, is exploring alternatives like shifting more products to plastic bottles to mitigate costs. The increased production costs may lead to higher prices for canned beverages in the U.S., affecting consumers who favor affordable drink options. This price hike could disproportionately impact lower-income households that rely on budget-friendly beverages. Middle-aged Americans, who often juggle family expenses and healthcare costs, may feel the squeeze more acutely as daily essentials become less affordable. General Motors is facing challenges due to the 25% tariff on imported vehicles from Canada. leading to increased production costs. In response, GM announced the elimination of one shift at its Oshawa, Ontario plant, resulting in approximately 700 job cuts. The reduction in Canadian production may lead GM to shift more manufacturing to the US, potentially creating jobs domestically. However, the overall industry faces uncertainty, and consumers might see vehicle prices rise by $800 to $3,000 due to increased material costs. Middle-aged factory workers, already coping with job insecurity and limited retraining opportunities, could be among the hardest hit by industry shifts and layoffs. Alcoa, a leading U.S. aluminum producer, anticipates a $90 million impact in the current quarter due to the 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum imports. With 70% of its aluminum production based in Canada, the company is evaluating options to mitigate these costs. The increased costs for Alcoa may trickle down to industries reliant on aluminum, such as automotive and construction, leading to higher prices for end products and potential job losses in sectors dependent on affordable aluminum supplies. Middle-aged workers in these downstream industries, many of whom have long tenures and fewer relocation options, may struggle to adapt to rising costs and reduced demand. Campbell Soup is confronting higher packaging costs. As aluminum tariffs drive up expenses for canned goods, the company is considering sourcing alternatives and may pass increased costs onto consumers. Price increases in canned goods could affect consumers seeking economical meal options, particularly impacting middle and low-income families who rely on such products for affordable nutrition. Middle-aged Americans managing both childcare and elder care responsibilities may find rising grocery bills especially burdensome. Tesla is experiencing a significant downturn in Quebec, Canada, with new vehicle registrations plummeting over 85% in Q1 2025 compared to the previous quarter. This decline coincides with the suspension of Canada's federal EV rebates for Tesla, amid trade tensions stemming from U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. Reduced sales in Canada may lead Tesla to reevaluate its production and investment strategies, potentially affecting U.S. America's steel sector is experiencing significant challenges due to recent tariff policies, leading to job losses and increased costs. How are these developments affecting the daily lives of American workers and consumers? The U.S. steel industry is encountering financial setbacks, with United States Steel Corporation reporting a net loss of $116 million in the first quarter of 2025, a reversal from a $171 million profit in the same period last year. This downturn is attributed to increased tariffs on steel imports, which have raised production costs and reduced competitiveness. Recent developments have led to significant job losses in the U.S. steel industry, with over 1,200 layoffs at Cleveland Cliffs facilities in Michigan and Minnesota, and a workforce reduction of approximately 900 employees at Granite City Works in Illinois. These figures underscore the broader challenges facing steelworkers and related sectors amid shifting trade policies. The implementation of higher tariffs on imported steel has resulted in a cost spiral for American manufacturers. Companies face the dilemma of absorbing increased costs, raising prices, or reducing their workforce to maintain profitability. Households are now paying more for everyday goods, including cars, washing machines, and even basic home repairs. For middle-class families already battling inflation, these added costs are particularly painful. Older Americans planning home renovations or car replacements are finding themselves postponing purchases, further slowing demand. In some areas, price hikes of 10 to 15% have been recorded for key goods tied to steel inputs, putting added strain on fixed-income retirees and working families alike. Major automotive manufacturers like General Motors and Ford are scaling back production and delaying new model releases in response to increased steel costs. Ford has temporarily halted operations at certain facilities, and Harley-Davidson is considering relocating some production overseas to mitigate expenses. These corporate decisions have real consequences for workers on the ground. Thousands of auto employees, many in the Midwest and South, face furloughs or job uncertainty. With fewer vehicles rolling off the lines, car dealerships are reporting shortages, pushing prices higher. This directly affects families needing affordable transportation, a particular concern in rural and suburban areas, where public transit is limited. The broader economic impact of these tariffs includes a projected decrease in GDP growth. Goldman Sachs has revised its 2025 GDP growth forecast down to 1.7%, from an initial 2.4%, citing the adverse effects of rising tariffs. This slowdown is particularly hard on older workers, who are often the first to be cut during industrial restructuring. As job opportunities contract and wage growth stagnates, many households are dipping into savings or delaying retirement. The prospect of long-term unemployment is rising in industrial towns, while younger generations may be discouraged from pursuing careers in manufacturing altogether. For a country that once built its middle class on factory floors, the current trajectory is raising fundamental economic questions. Ford's strategic pivot to Canada for electric vehicle production has stirred political tensions and economic concerns in the U.S. How will this cross-border shift reshape the American automotive landscape? Ford Motor Company has announced a significant investment of over $1.8 billion to transform its Oakville assembly plant in Ontario into a hub for electric vehicle, or EV, production. This move includes plans to build vehicles and assemble battery packs on site, marking a strategic shift in Ford's manufacturing operations. This transition has led to concerns in U.S. industrial regions. In Michigan, Ford temporarily laid off 600 non-striking workers at its Wayne assembly plant, citing adjustments in production schedules. Additionally, Cleveland-Cliffs, a major steel supplier, announced layoffs of over 1,200 workers in Michigan and Minnesota, attributing the decision to decreased automotive demand influenced by shifting manufacturing strategies. In response to Ford's investment in Canada, President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, excluding energy products, which would be subjected to a 10% tariff. The administration aims to reduce the U.S. trade deficit and encourage stronger Canadian border enforcement. Such tariffs could lead to increased prices for vehicles imported from Canada, affecting American consumers. The automotive industry warns that these measures may disrupt the integrated North American supply chain, potentially leading to higher costs and reduced availability of certain vehicle models in the U.S. market. Canada has proactively positioned itself as an attractive destination for EV manufacturing through clear policies and substantial incentives. The federal IZEV program offers rebates of up to $5,000 for eligible zero-emission vehicles, while provinces like Quebec provide additional incentives, with some drivers earning up to $13,000 per electric vehicle. These incentives have attracted significant investments from automakers, including Ford's $1.2 billion manufacturing plant for EV battery material in Quebec. The U.S. automotive industry faces increased competition as manufacturers consider relocating operations to benefit from Canada's favorable policies, potentially leading to further job losses and reduced investment in American manufacturing facilities. The shift in manufacturing has led to disruptions in the U.S. automotive retail sector. Ford dealerships are experiencing inventory shortages, leading to reduced sales, and in some cases, closures. For instance, TriStar Ford in Pennsylvania announced its closure after 10 years, citing challenges related to inventory and federal EV mandates. The closure of dealerships and layoffs in manufacturing have broader implications for American communities. Local economies suffer as jobs are lost and consumer confidence declines. The automotive industry's restructuring underscores the need for strategic policies to support domestic manufacturing and mitigate adverse effects on workers and communities.
6 major U.S. companies are scaling back domestic operations amid rising tariffs, signaling a shift in the nation's industrial landscape. How will these changes affect American workers and consumers? General Motors anticipates a $4 to $5 billion revenue hit due to tariffs, prompting operational shifts. Ford projects a $1.5 billion impact, leading to cost-cutting measures. Harley-Davidson has withdrawn its financial forecast, citing tariff uncertainties. Caterpillar expects up to $350 million in additional costs this quarter from tariffs, affecting its construction and resource industries segments. This slow but steady industrial retreat is not just a boardroom issue. It's reshaping the job market. Thousands of blue-collar jobs in Detroit, Pittsburgh, and smaller factory towns are under threat. Facility closures and reduced shifts could hit unionized labor the hardest. In areas already vulnerable to job loss, communities face a double burden: fewer opportunities and higher living costs. As companies reduce their domestic footprints, America's industrial backbone grows thinner, less resilient to shocks, and more reliant on foreign output. Walmart's CFO has publicly warned that U.S. tariffs are beginning to bite into profit margins, forcing strategic shifts in pricing. To stay afloat, Walmart canceled hundreds of overseas product orders and is scaling back inventory across thousands of locations. Nike, facing manufacturing costs up by $6 to $10 per shoe, has already adjusted prices for nearly 40% of its top-selling products, affecting lines popular among students, athletes, and working-class shoppers. Experts forecast apparel inflation will rise by an additional 4% by year-end if tariffs persist. The shift hits everyday Americans directly. Shoes once priced at $60 now cost up to $80. Back to school, shopping season could become a financial squeeze for millions of households. Essential items, clothing, shoes, basic electronics are no longer priced for affordability. Middle-class families are adjusting by buying less, postponing non-essentials, or switching to lower-quality alternatives. While corporate leaders cite necessity, American families feel the squeeze at checkout. For many, the economic pain is no longer theoretical. It's sitting right there in the shopping cart. Caterpillar has long been a pillar of American industry. But with tariff-related costs ballooning by up to $350 million this quarter alone, its leadership is warning of potential operational relocations. The company is considering moving segments of its heavy equipment manufacturing to Mexico or Canada, regions with more stable trade conditions, and access to untaxed components, with tariffs adding pressure across steel, aluminum, and electronics. Similar manufacturers are quietly mapping exits from the U.S. industrial belt. The concern isn't just corporate profitability. It's whether the U.S. can remain competitive in global industry. For workers in Peoria, Illinois, and beyond, this is a wake-up call. The threat of losing high-paying, skilled labor positions to cheaper foreign markets is more than political rhetoric. It's becoming economic reality. Layoffs may not be mass scale yet, but the uncertainty is paralyzing. Training programs stall, investment dries up, and younger workers are discouraged from entering trade industries. As industrial might shifts offshore, the socio-economic fabric of entire regions could unravel. What once was a path to middle-class stability now feels more like a dead end. A new $25 trillion trade alliance among ASEAN, China, and Gulf nations is reshaping global commerce. As the U.S. steps back from multilateral deals, is a parallel economic system emerging? At the recent ASEAN GCC China Summit in Kuala Lumpur, leaders announced a strategic trade alliance encompassing ASEAN, the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, and China. Collectively, these regions represent a GDP of nearly $25 trillion and a population of approximately 2.15 billion people. This alliance aims to deepen economic integration through initiatives like the ASEAN-China Free Trade Area, ACFTA 3.0, and a proposed China-GCC Free Trade Agreement. China's significant investments in infrastructure, including high-speed rail, logistics, and 5G networks, are central to this collaboration. The formation of this bloc could shift global trade dynamics, potentially affecting U.S. exports and influence in these regions. American businesses may face increased competition and need to adapt to new trade standards and practices established by this alliance. Saudi Arabia and China are advancing discussions to price oil sales in Chinese yuan, challenging the U.S. dollar's dominance in global energy markets. Additionally, TotalEnergies has completed its first liquefied natural gas, LNG, transaction with China, settled in yuan. China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, is gaining traction as an alternative to the SWIFT network, facilitating yuan-denominated transactions and reducing reliance on Western financial systems. A move away from the dollar in global energy trade could lead to decreased demand for the U.S. currency, potentially impacting exchange rates and increasing borrowing costs. American consumers might face higher prices for imported goods and energy. Since 2017, the U.S. has not entered into any new comprehensive trade agreements. In contrast, China is actively pursuing and updating multiple trade deals, including ACFTA 3.0 and the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. Canada and Mexico are also diversifying their trade relationships, seeking stronger ties with Asia-Pacific nations to reduce dependence on the U.S. market. The U.S.'s absence from new trade agreements may limit market access for American exporters, potentially affecting job growth and economic competitiveness. Consumers could face higher prices due to tariffs and reduced availability of foreign goods. China is promoting a soft power approach by exporting its digital infrastructure and governance models through initiatives like the Digital Silk Road. Projects like Vision 2045 aim to harmonize economic regulations across ASEAN, China, and GCC countries. This strategy could lead to the development of an alternative global economic system, less influenced by Western norms and institutions. The rise of parallel economic systems may challenge U.S. leadership in setting global standards, potentially isolating American businesses from emerging markets and new technological frameworks. Canada's flight reductions to the U.S. signal escalating trade tensions with global implications. Could this be the tipping point that reshapes America's role in the global economy? In early 2025, Canada responded to new U.S. tariffs, 25% on Canadian steel, aluminum, and other goods by reducing non-essential flights to the United States. Major airlines like Air Canada and WestJet cut several U.S. routes due to declining demand. The absence of Canadian tourists, a key spending force in destinations like Florida, Nevada, and New York, is already hitting the U.S. economy hard. Tourism-dependent states report losses in the billions, with thousands of hospitality workers now facing job cuts or reduced hours. Hotel bookings have dropped sharply, and local restaurants, attractions, and small retailers are struggling to stay afloat. What was once a winter migration has become a painful economic freeze. Furthermore, flight bookings from Canada to the U.S. for the April to September 2025 period decreased by more than 70% compared to the previous year, leading to significant revenue losses in the travel and tourism sectors. Amid U.S. trade policy uncertainties, countries such as China, Japan, and Germany are redirecting trade and investment toward Canada. Canada's stable trade agreements and transparent policies make it an attractive alternative for global partners. This shift is costing the United States tens of billions in lost export opportunities, especially in agriculture, energy, machinery, and tech. American farmers are seeing fewer foreign buyers. Manufacturers are holding excess inventory. And once booming export hubs are slowing down, dragging the fragile post-pandemic recovery into uncertainty, layoffs are expected to rise in export-driven sectors, adding pressure to already stretched local economies. The OECD has significantly downgraded its U.S. economic growth forecast for 2025 from 2.8% to 1.6%, attributing the slowdown to rising trade tariffs and policy uncertainty. Travel restrictions have led many Canadian snowbirds to sell their U.S. vacation properties, especially in Florida and Arizona. Real estate agencies report a surge in listings from Canadian owners unable to utilize their properties due to travel limitations. Entire communities in southern states that cater to Canadian retirees are seeing cash flow dry up. From local pharmacies and diners to hospitals and home repair services, many businesses are seeing fewer customers and shrinking profits. In Florida alone, some resort towns report over 40% declines in winter season revenues, forcing layoffs and threatening closures. The economic chill isn't just seasonal, it's structural. Notably, in Scottsdale, Arizona, Canadian property listings jumped from around 100 in early 2024 to nearly 700 in the first quarter of 2025, indicating a significant sell-off that could impact local real estate markets. Canada's trade actions highlight a broader trend of countries reevaluating their economic ties with the U.S. Allies like Germany and Japan express concerns over U.S. trade policies, leading to strengthened partnerships elsewhere. As the U.S. becomes more isolated in global trade, consumers may face higher prices and limited product availability. Businesses could lose international market share, affecting profits and employment rates domestically.